And I've been working in Los Angeles County on all these cold case homicides, and I realized as I'm watching, it used to be when I was young, I felt like this was an honorable job to do, right? I mean, I was in law enforcement, my dad was a cop before me, and I thought this is a good thing to do. But it turns out as I've kind of journeyed through my career, it sometimes feels like it's not such an honorable thing to do. It doesn't seem to be received the same way it used to be received. The life that my son has today as a police officer is different than the life that I had before him. Now, he's wearing the same uniform, and he's got the same name tag because we're not very creative. We use the same name over and over and over again. We are, like I always say, we're the George Foreman of law enforcement, okay? George has got 6 sons, and they're all named George. So his name is Jim Wallace, and he's got the same uniforms that I had before him. I'm using the same tools I used before him, and I use the same tools that my dad used before me. His name is also Jim Wallace. Yeah, we just use the same name over and over again. So you think this kid right here in the middle is a little bit concerned? He knows he has to have a son. He has to name his son Jim, and then he has to figure out how to get him into law enforcement, right? That's not going to be easy. But I will tell you that as we've worked through this, and since 57 years we've been working in this profession, the way the public would have seen my dad is very different than the way the public today sees my son. Things have changed. I think you sense it. I sense it. I think my son's up for a different experience than I had. And I want to talk about that as the first talk tonight. We could make a case for God's existence or a case for the reliability of Scripture. We're going to start, though, with something that I think is even more painful, is even more difficult to talk about. Augustine puts it this way. He says, there are things that we love truth when it enlightens us, but we hate truth when it convicts us. And that's what I'm going to do in the first talk. I need to talk about some things that are tough to talk about, that really involve the way that law enforcement, the way we are divided in our culture. And right now, we are probably more divided than we have ever been before. Do you get that sense that we are more polarized as a country than we've ever been before? That there are groups that are divided by this chasm, and I wish it was just this bad. It's actually worse than this. The chasm is wider, and it seems to be getting wider every day. And one of the things that I think is creating this chasm is this conflict and this struggle, even if it's just intellectual or if it's cultural, between issues involving race and police. So what I want to do in this first talk is navigate this controversy. We'll also start with all the most popular topics in this conference. Now, there's a guy named Frank Bruni from New York Times, and who's written about this, and I like what he's written. I don't agree with him on almost anything else he writes about, but I do agree about this. He says it this way, and I think he's absolutely correct. For more and more Americans, the other side isn't merely misguided in the extreme. It used to be we would disagree about things and we would say, well, that other side is wrong and this side is my side is correct. But now we're far more vitriolic than that, right? It's not that they're just misguided, it's that they're evil. We may disagree, but it's because you're evil, not just wrong, you're evil. And if you think about that, virtue is measured by the starkness with which the evil is labeled and reviled. And that really has some satisfying aspects, emotionally satisfying aspects, but it does come with a cost. And I think it has come with a cost in our culture.